So that didn't feel official at all, did it? It felt like all we needed was the Star Wars kind of theme at the beginning to start us off, right?
Yeah, it was cool though.
Makes me feel official. So
Yeah, it was a nice warm up. I was able to get my zen. So
I don't know if you got a cup to the side, maybe more zen in that cup too. I don't know. I don't know what you're working with today. But listen, this is going to be, I'm going to be honest, this is going to be a love fest. This is going to be thank you. This book was awesome. All that kind of stuff. So I'm hoping you're not too shy or too overwhelmed by that. But look, I'm really appreciative. I want to say that before we even get started with your bio. We're really appreciative of you jumping in on this on your week before. You got a couple of days left. So we're just thankful for you being here, Ryan. So let me start out by the official stuff. We're supposed to say who you are and what your book's about and all that good stuff. So I'm going to give you the official bio, and then you can add to it if you want. Ryan Douglas is an author, poet, and freelance writer from Atlanta, Georgia. His work on race, literacy, sexuality, and media representation has appeared in the Huffington Post, Atlanta Black Star, Everyday Feminism, Nerdy People of Color, Age of Awareness, LGBTQ Nation, and Medium, among others. His amazingly terrifying debut novel, The Taking of Jake Livingstone, is a YA horror out through Penguin Putnam this coming Tuesday, July 13, 2021. If you're in the chat, if you're in the room, please help me welcome Ryan Douglas to the show. It's supposed to be a bunch of
some of my friends saying hello in the comment section.
Yeah, we got some friends jumping in. We appreciate you guys jumping in. Please make sure if you want to add any comments to Ryan, just again show him some love. Add it in the comments. We may pop that comment on screen as long as it's it's a good comment. This book here, and before we dive into it, I know there's like you guys usually have like a description or write up for the book. And instead of reading that, what I would like for you to do is just, in your own words, how would you describe this book?
So it's a YA horror, but it incorporates mystery elements, contemporary life elements, a little bit of romance, and it tells the story of a teen medium, Jake Livingstone, who can see the dead. So he sees dead people living their final moments of life on repeat. People who die by freak accident end up stuck in limbo. So the dead world is kind of this hellscape where dead people relive the final moments of their death on repeat. So Jake is just trying to survive as one of the only Black students at his prep school. So he doesn't really engage with ghosts a lot. But then his next door neighbor is murdered, and he feels like the ghost of a dead school shooter is responsible, and this ghost starts to haunt him at home and at school, and then he has to kind of learn how to use his powers in order to banish the spirit before he possesses his body. So that's the summary.
And the crazy part is I was trying to find a book that kind of like matched up with it, especially in young adult, and it just couldn't find one. So you talk about extending the genre, right? Extending the format. You're everywhere now. I'm going through my Instagram feed, my Twitter feed. You're on list after list. Read this book for July. Read this book for YA. Like, seriously, before we get to the details of the book, what is that like? Like to be heralded the way you are?
It just started on July 1st. I didn't expect to be on all of these lists, but I woke up on the 1st of July, and I didn't even I'm still learning as I go, so I didn't know that all the lists kind of came out at that time. So my editor emailed me, my publicist emailed me, you're on this list and that list and that list, and I'm still kind of confused because I don't even know how these journalists or like the people who compile these lists have read the book, but I really appreciate it, and it's really cool and surreal. So I just hope when it comes out, people are enthusiastic and enjoy it.
You're taking that a lot better than I would. Like, you're real humble. You're like real chill about it. I'd be like,
Yeah.
you guys should worship me. Like, like, I'm here now. Like, I'm serious. I'm
Yeah.
seeing it everywhere I can get it, and I'm just so happy that having read it, that they're seeing the same thing that I'm seeing. So, so kudos to you for being humble too. Let's see if that extends when it becomes a movie. Maybe I don't
I
know.
hope, I hope I always stay humble.
All right. Well, it sounds like you got some friends in the chat that maybe help you with that. So keep you on solid ground.
Sure.
We talked about this prior to coming on live. I'm just really happy. I want to congratulate you on your first book. And as someone who follows a lot of people on Twitter, writers, it seems like that process going from idea to a finished book is either long, it's stressful, it's a lot of changes, or you're battling with your book. You want this book to be written your way, and you have to fight with editors and publishers. So let's start with the beginning part. Like, how did you come up with this idea, this book? This is what you wanted to write.
So I came up with the idea in college. I was in a creative writing class my sophomore year, and it was a good class to sort of experiment with different genres because we were doing short stories, and I was kind of using that as a way to experiment with different genres and kind of figure out my style. I was still kind of learning what I wanted to do because I had queried science fiction and fantasy books, but I couldn't get an agent with those books, and I was trying to figure out like what is it keeping me from getting past the gates. And when I started getting into horror and writing horror, I was like, I just felt really in my element. I was like, this is what I'm meant to do. You can be as gross and over the top as you want to be. You can be very direct. You can just kind of the point is to kind of evoke fear and deal with traumas. And I felt like that was what I wanted to do. So I had always loved ghost stories. I like stories about stalkers. I wanted to write about the experience of isolation when you're a Black person around a lot of white people, explore how that ties into our academic system, and just do a cool book that was kind of supplying something more meditative on the state of race relations, but in like a fun way. It's pretty much where it sprouted from.
And I was going to hit that a little later, but since you took it there, I think that's a great point to start with. So if I was to summarize the book, you actually hit on a lot of different important topics, especially ones that are important for the young adult audience, which is primarily the target audience. Although I really do feel like adults could really enjoy this book as well. So it's young adult, but it could be everyone. But you hit on, racism. You hit on a little bit of classism in there somewhere. You hit on parenting. You hit on bullying. You hit on a lot of different pieces. Like, when you were crafting this book, this final product, did you say like, that maybe I should take that part out and maybe take that part out because of the subject matter? Or was it, this is the book as it's writing, and I'm just going to let it write itself, and then I'm going to let it be what it's going to be?
So going back to what you mentioned earlier about how there's not a lot of books that are similar, that's very true. And when we went on Sub initially to sell it, we didn't have any comp titles. So usually when you go on Sub, you say, it's like you give the publisher an idea of where it's going to sit on the shelf. So it's like Get Out meets whatever. They're saying Get Out meets Holly Jackson now, I think that's what they're saying. But that came after we had already sold the book and gone through edits. So it didn't have any comp titles. So it was always kind of something that was completely just, it was new for me at the time that I was writing it. And I knew that it was going to be new kind of for the genre because I had read YA horrors, and the horror felt kind of not what horror, like adult horror, had done for me as a writer. It didn't feel like it was really accessing the sort of traumas that I would want to see dealt with in the genre. So when I wrote it, I really did write it just for me, just to get my style together and get out what I wanted to deal with in terms of social issues. And I found an agent who was kind of like into it. And I think that it was the hook of it. I think the hook is just kind of hard to look away from because it's just like really sensational and over the top. Like you want to know what happens. So I definitely, when I was trying to compile a ghost story with social issues, racism, homophobia, the mental health institution, academia, all these issues, it was a really meticulous process with my editor in like weaving in the fantasy elements and the plot and the social issues and the characters. And it was like, we just had to take it like bit by bit and really figure out how the dead world was mirroring the live world, and how to do like a fantasy book with social issues. Is a very careful process.
Yeah, and you kind of weave that where it didn't feel forced, right? It didn't feel like all of a sudden now we got a Black Lives Matter rally in the middle of the book for no reason. Like you never did that, and I think that was the cool part about it. I felt like you worked on the characters and their lives and their progression. Sometimes you went back, by way of the journaling or the diaries, and said, "This is how this happened. This is how this person came to be." And I felt like that was smooth. It wasn't forced. And I think some books, especially in YA, because they're trying to get that hook, they throw it in there and it doesn't feel like part of the story. So really, really good job there. And so it brings me to one question I have, but there was a good question from the crowd I want to pop up. And this was around the story around you going back and forth, working on bits and pieces. Did this book like change dramatically? Did it have a bunch of additions and versions that were very different from the final copy, I should say?
Yeah, for sure. So the final copy is about 20,000 words shorter than what it was at like the height of edits, because I had a lot of info that I was trying to, because my editor for the first version, she said that I should kind of try to draw out the world building. So when I was going back for edits, it was like a really careful process of like explaining everything that there is to know about the paranormal world and everything about ghosts and everything about Jake's life and his history. And a lot of that was really trimmed down because like it's kind of like when you have deleted scenes in a movie, like it's giving you info and it's good background. And when you watch the deleted scene on DVD, you're like, oh, why wasn't that in the movie? But it's kind of just about the flow of the story, getting the reader to want to turn pages. And that's kind of one of my primary goals in writing a thriller. But it went through about 4 rounds of edits. Before I sold it, I had to do a revise and resubmit with my editor who was interested before she wanted to buy it. So she gave me edits and then I revised it then she bought it, and then we did 2 more rounds of edits. So I had to rewrite the whole thing, and then it became.
So, I mean, did you feel like they were taking away your baby? Like, how did that feel, like that process?
It was very frustrating. I often felt like my editor did not understand what I was trying to do, and I think that's natural. Like I should have expected that because it is a horror novel. It is something that's kind of in its own lane. And I have to kind of supply the vision. My editor is supplying the sort of technical, like, well, this doesn't make perfect sense, like the common reader and comments like that. So it felt like I wasn't being understood, and I worried that readers wouldn't get it because I get it and I know what I'm doing and I know that my readers who I'm writing to are going to get it, but it has to have a sort of commercial aspect to it as well. So it has to have all those elements that make like the common reader interested too.
Yeah, that's that's the hard part, right? It's almost like musicians too, right? You can say I want to write it the way I want to write it, and then but you still got to sell records, so you still got to sell books at some point.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
it's there's a topic that we just can't not talk about even before we get to the characters, and
Okay.
that representation, right? So this book clearly has a representation platform that's very important. The reason why this book is so important, if I summed it up in one word, this book is necessary, is that this is the first one, and I read a lot of YA books and adult books, but this is the first one that I remember where there's an actual queer Black boys as central characters in the book. Like, that's important, right, for the audiences that we're trying to reach with these books. So talk about that. Like, why was that important? You know, why would you say that that was a real critical part of the book? Again, it didn't feel like you were just like forcing it, but it felt like it was so important for the nature of this book to be the book that it is.
Yeah. So the first time I wrote it, actually, when we sold it, Jake was a straight character. He did not meet his crush. He did not have any. He came to the realization that he might like be queer at the end, but it wasn't really explored. It was kind of tacked on. But I was really afraid to do that for so many reasons. I had never seen it before, never seen a gay Black boy in a fantasy book or any science fiction or anything like that. So I made him straight, and during edits, I really had to tell my editor, okay, I'm ready to do this. Let's make him gay. I sent her an email. I was like, so as we go through edits, I think it's important to make Jake gay. And she was like, okay. So then she started asking me all these questions about how it would change the story. And that's why I had to redo it, because I had to bring that into his character from the very beginning. But I think it's important. I definitely think it's important. I don't like to overinflate the importance, because I feel like this one book is very personal to experiences that I've had. And we need a lot more experiences to really flesh out that market of queer Black superheroes or protagonists or whatever. But it was important because it felt like I was in a position to write this story that was already dealing with bullying and issues pertaining to isolation, and it just felt like it fit in. And it's also something that's close to me as a writer, so I always want to write the truth of what I know. So that's how he ended up being gay.
So that's interesting that you brought that up, that it wasn't, in there at some point, because there were some pieces in the book that you can clearly tell, like, I'm trying not to give away too many spoilers here, because just as a reminder, you need to go get the book. Taking of Jake Livingstone comes out July 13th. You can pre-order today. But there's a scene in the book that actually made me think about my childhood. It's the basketball scene where he slips him the note. Yeah. And he's like, do you like me or do you like me? And I'm like, was that there? Was that the other kid with the shirt off playing basketball, the sweat dripping down my back, and just oblivious to, or did I do what that character did? It was like, I don't get down like that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. I thought that was like a real important moment. Like, it was clunky, it was like a little awkward, but it was like, this is what it could be like. Not saying it always like that, but this is what it could be like if that experience was to happen. So I would, I'm glad you had the courage and the push to do it. I think those little moments, and I won't give away all of them, were important for the characters that were in the book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So those moments are some of the rawest moments for me when I read it, when I write it. When I was writing it, I didn't do a lot of editing of those because they were just so pulled from my experience, and I kind of just wanted it to be exactly what because that part comes in a scene where Jake is really dealing with a lot of trauma that he's buried, and it all comes back. It all comes back, and I kind of wanted to just put it down because I didn't want to overthink it. I didn't want to feel like, oh, what, like, can I say this? Can I? Because it's almost like they train you to write with the idea that a white person is reading it in YA, rather than, like, a lot of the editorial is about making it commercial, making it mainstream. So in those moments, it's not about that anymore. It's about the intra-community conflict of homophobia, transphobia, what that really looks like in our community without, the white aspect. So it was definitely very raw when I was going through that.
I was going to ask that a little bit later, but how much of this book is derived from your personal experiences, would you say?
I would say that Jake is a lot like me as a character. His experiences, like, day to day, are not the experiences that I had in high school. I'm not talking about, like, obviously the paranormal stuff, but what he goes through in high school, it's based on things that I went through in college, rather than high school. And some of the romance is also based on things that I found later on in life. So it is based on my experiences, but it's set at an earlier stage for Jake.
So let's talk about some of these characters, because I mentioned them earlier that I think you did a good job of making them kind of like relatable. Even the villain, you had me feeling for the villain once. I'll talk about that in a second. I was like, you're right. Oh, wait a minute, he's the villain. I should be rooting for the villain. But anyway, but you wrote him in such a way where it's kind of like the villain, the heroes, the regular people didn't matter. You wrote them in a way where it's kind of like they weren't perfect in what they were doing, whether they were the bad guy. They weren't a perfect bad guy. They weren't a perfect hero. The parents weren't the Huxtables. The kids didn't have this moment where it was like they fell for something and then all of a sudden they instantly figured it out in a perfect manner. I think you did a good job of humanizing and making this a real experience for all of the characters. But there are 3 characters specifically. We're going to do our best to not give it away, because do I need to put the book up? You need to buy the book, Taking of Jake Livingston, July 13th. Buy whatever dope books. So Jake Livingston, just to kind of give them the general pieces if they haven't read the book, high school student, lives with his mom and brother, Benji. He's a medium, as you mentioned, and is constantly in contact or being haunted by or followed by or touched by spirits in this other realm. He has had feelings about his sexuality, and we mentioned this a little bit throughout his life. And I think when we get towards the end of the book, that's when he realizes, how strong they are. He's going to embrace it. He's going to be courageous about it. But he also thought that he didn't have the support. You mentioned this word isolation, and I think that applied to numerous characters in the book. So if you don't mind, can you talk to us how you developed this character, Jake? Yes, so you pull from your real life, you pull from other experiences. How did you get this character to be who the character is in the book?
So I definitely started with myself. I definitely wanted to see, like, the sort of representation. I don't want to say he's goth, but he's almost that. He's almost like has this, like, really shy disposition. He doesn't express a lot. He's not like a particularly emotional character. And I think I went too far with that initially, because my editor was kind of like, why is he such a sad sack? Why is he sad all the time? And I was just like, because I'm trying to represent a different, like, a softer side of Black boys, and he's not really plugged in. He's shy. We don't really see that. So I was simultaneously basing it on myself and, like, conscious of the fact that we need to see Black kids represented with all sorts of colors and all sorts of personality types. Shy black boys, they don't usually, if they're in the story, they're not usually the main character. So I wanted that. I wanted to feel, because if I had read that as a kid, I know that I would have been like, oh my gosh, like he's scared like me. I just would have felt represented. And then in terms of his growth as a character, I think that Jake grows as he kind of realizes that he's not on his own, which is hard when you've been traumatized, when you've been abused, to kind of get out of that sense that everybody hates you, that nobody is there for you. He doesn't know how to communicate. He has never been in a situation where people are understanding him, and he's been ripped out of his community. He's been brought into this white school, and they're intent on misunderstanding him. So he kind of he's retreated. He's retreated into himself. So I guess his growth is about finding those connections and realizing the people that he is safe with, the people that he can talk to, realizing what they are willing to provide as support for him, and not allowing his own traumas to swallow him up and make him feel like he's completely by himself.
Yeah, because he went through a lot throughout the book. His life is not a perfect circle, right? I mean, there's a lot that's happening in there. And even as a young person, in his overall life, I mean, he's figuring out stuff as he's going along. I love the fact that he was having aha moments.
Yeah.
With these spirits. It was like, oh, I guess I should have did that. Like the looking under the bed part. Like, it was like, oh, I guess I should check there. Like that's a real teenager moment. Like it's perfect. I was glad you put those little pieces in there. I hope people catch that when they read it.
It's very teen. It's very much teen. Kind of like harkens back to those stories that those fun stories you watch as a kid, where the kids are like on adventures and uncovering the mysteries. And I think that was really important, because the book can get very dark, very harrowing, but in those moments where he's like, I one up Sawyer Doon, and you feel like rooting for him. Like he's like proud of himself, and that's not common. Like at the beginning, he's kind of like, he is a sad sack. He's kind of sulky. He's like, oh, no one understands me. Then when he like gets into it and starts like moving toward solving his own problems, you see that spark of joy, and you really start to root for him.
Yeah, I love those. Those are the moments that I was like, yes.
Yeah.
All right, so I don't know if we can have a discussion without talking about Sawyer. I don't know where to start with Sawyer, because Sawyer is like, he's like everything that I read about in TV and in the movie, I see on the TV and read about. You told the stories, mass shooting. He goes and shoots, and there's people like shot at the, in the neighborhood, and he's this character that you would like love to hate, right? I mean, he's perfect by setup, but the profile says hate him from beginning page to the end page. And then there was some moments you dropped in there. It's like, oh, gosh, I'm going to start feeling for this guy in a second. And I'm like, why, Ryan? Why? Because there was the kneecap incident. I was like,
oh, yeah. Yeah.
But that was the part of where it was kind of like, even when people have these mental breakdowns, issues, whatever the answer is, there's something about their story that may be something we're missing, something we haven't listened to or looked into. And that feeling he had throughout the book, but he didn't feel like anyone was there or anyone loved him. Some of it was founded in real life stuff. Like that's the part that I thought was really important about the book as well.
Yeah.
So I got a question here, but I don't want to ask that question. I want to ask those questions. Like, why did you make him lovable at some point? Like for real? Like,
so
he's terrorizing people, and you got a point where it's like, you know what?
It's funny
I'm Team Sawyer now. Like,
I've seen people say some people are like really outraged by it. Like some reviewers are like, why would you humanize a school shooter? I I don't think that villains who are like totally evil are interesting to read about personally. Um, I think if I would have, it's very like in the context of the plot that Sawyer is evil. You know, you see him in one of the earliest chapters, you see him torturing bugs. He has a bug collection. He picks wings off of insects and picks their legs off and just stores their body parts in a jar in a shed. You see him killing his neighbor. You know that he killed these kids at school. So he's very, he's stalking Jake. He's torturing Jake. So he's evil, like in the context of the novel and in the hook. And you see that. So I guess my challenge was, if I'm going to make this villain so evil, how do I show, what that comes from? Where does that come from? How does victimhood tie into villainhood, and how much does it tie in? Because I think that Sawyer is evil on his own, and it was provoked by the people around him who are also not great people. So I think it's a really complicated conversation to have. But as a writer, I was really interested in seeing how, that starts, what the roots of hate are, what the roots of white hate are specifically, because that's what I wanted to explore, because I didn't know, and I just went to the page and wanted to look at that. So,
because it definitely hit home as a Black man reading this book, and it's like there's a white shooter. I'm like, villain, hate him, don't want to read any more about his backstory. And then I read the backstory and it's like, oh, gosh. But it's nice that you put that work in there, that put that backstory. I got a question here from Justin Jr. I wanted to put that on. He's asked it earlier, but wanted to make sure we got some questions from the audience before we checked out. What's the challenge you face as a writer with this title?
Well, going off of what I was just saying, the challenge of making Sawyer a villain while still having a human component, that was probably the biggest challenge I faced. Being comfortable enough to write Jake as a gay character and include his trauma was the second biggest challenge. There were certain snags in editorial where the narrative style was confusing my editor, and she was advocating for a style that was a little bit more linear, because what ties Jake and Sawyer's chapters is not that it's not necessarily a sense of time and place, but more of an emotional connection between them. Like, you see where they are similar, you see where they're different. You'll see Jake in a chapter interacting with his brother, then the next chapter you'll see Sawyer interacting with his sister. And I think when you read it, it's kind of like it's giving that to you in a way that is supposed to be subtle, that sort of like emotional connection between them that is there but not there. So that just doing that was really hard, like weaving that in a way that didn't make it feel obvious that I was saying, hey guys, here's Sawyer, and here's they're similar, but they're different. You don't want it to feel like you're preaching. You just kind of want it to feel like it's creeping up on you until that moment where you see the threads kind of like run into each other.
Yeah, that was, like I said, the book just felt natural. It was a good read too, and I think most people, when they read it, they will be one of those books they can't put down kind of thing. So I do have another question from the audience. And this is, just I guess for potential writers out there, potential people who are looking to get in the industry, any advice on how to get a publisher?
So you have to get an agent first, which is a whole hill to climb. I'm on my second agent now, but I started querying when I was a teenager. So I queried for about 10 years, which is uncommon if you're more developed as a writer. Mm-hmm. But I started when I was really young, and I just really wanted to make a career out of it. You have to not be afraid of your own style. I think that's really important. When I went to a conference, that really changed things because I was able to hear from agents and hear insights into the business. Following Twitter is horrible, but following industry people on Twitter, it can get you really plugged in. And I got in that way as well. I started to connect with authors and agents on issues of representation, who like people who are in that and interested in picking up diverse literature. There's a lot of ways online to get connected and find mentorship. Peer groups are really important. It's really just about developing your craft and knowing your style and bringing your style to agents in a way that is completely confident, but also knowing the books that are being published and kind of being able to make those sort of adjustments to your work so that it fits into the market. So that's
so you said Twitter is terrible.
Yeah.
Do you want to expand on what you mean?
I think that book Twitter is full of drama.
Oh, for sure. Book Twitter is bad. Cooking Twitter is bad right now too, because there's some kind of thing going on. Yes.
I never knew that. Oh my gosh.
The Kitchenista and some guy named Darius Cooks are going at it. They're showing receipts and doing sodium counts for food. It is freaking hilarious. You might actually feel better about YA Twitter.
Yeah, like I always want to help people get connected and stuff, but I don't want people to fall into these connections where they turn hostile, because that's happened to me a few times, and it's a rough game out there in the book world.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that, but it sounds like, I mean, I'm glad that the person asked the question. I mean, Twitter has its advantages and definitely has its pitfalls. A really good question from Anthony says, where do you hope YA goes from where we are? Who or what do you hope to see more of?
Well, I hope that we can see more authentic portrayals of Black life, Black queer life. I hope that we can get away from the kind of thing that you were talking about, like where there's like a random Black Lives Matter protest or it feels like overly politicized. I want to have conversations where we can get to places where we have like Black characters in work that doesn't feel performative or like is trying too hard. I want to see more science fiction and fantasy with Black characters and Afrofuturist worlds that feel new, that don't really feel like they are retelling anything. And I have nothing against retellings. I just feel that now is a good time to imagine imagine ourselves into fantastical landscapes that don't exist anymore, or that don't exist yet, I guess I should say. So I want to see more of that. I want to see romantic comedies that are specifically for queer Black men and queer Black people in general. I want to see like our stories represented in a lighter way. And that's pretty much it.
So I'm going to add something on there. And I think you would agree with this, where the Black person doesn't die. Can we have less of those books too?
Yes. And
so thank you for giving us one.
And then while we're at it, the Black boy doesn't face police brutality, because that's overwhelming at this point.
Yeah, it's a lot of it. We filled the quota on that one. We're good. We can move on to another piece.
Yeah, we've done enough of it. We need the Black heroes to be soaring and victorious at the end.
Yeah, I would love to see some Black people ascend to CEO or something like that without having to be like a drug lord before that. Like, can we get those
yeah, we get it. We get it.
Another question, and I'm gonna go to a couple questions I have at the end. This is a good one, because I already know what the answer is. Would you like for your book to be adapted to a film? If so, who would you like to create it? Jordan Peele.
Yes, I would love for the book to be a movie, and I would love for Jordan Peele to adapt it. and we're working on that. And I'm not gonna say anything, but hoping for good news. Hoping for some good news.
Yeah, this book can definitely be a movie. And one of the questions I had, and this, so thank you, Raymond, for the alley-oop. One of the questions I had is there's always characters and they'll put names in there as best they can. But there's one character I would love to hear if you had a person you had in your mind to play the person, and that's Alistair. They're gonna work on Jake, and they're gonna work on all the other characters, but Alistair feels like he's got to be dreamy, like he's got to be like charming, charismatic. Yeah. He just can't walk in and be like, "Oh, really, that guy?" Like,
no, he's got to be.
So, is there anybody you can think of in your head that like could be that person?
I feel like there's just not a lot of teen actors who are black males. Like, I don't know. Deron Horton comes to mind, but he's almost 30. So
so he'd have to play like, was it Beverly Hills 90210, where they like 30, but play the
team.
Exactly.
I kind of pictured Deron Horton, but I don't know.
Right. No, that one they got to get right. That one's
because he's such a dream. Like when he comes into the narrative, it's such a change for Jake, and it's such a change in his world. Like everything that he sees around him is different. So right. I hope that an actor, maybe an unknown, can come and bring the charm and bring that lightness that he has about him. And I hope that I really want to see that on screen. So I hope that we can get a good actor.
So the inverse of a dream would be if they cast that character as white.
I would die.
I don't want to. We said this is going to be a love fest, but that would be like the anti-dream, right? It was.
I would be like, "You've ruined my work. You've ruined."
Right.
Like, that would be a deal breaker. It has to be. Jake has to fall for a black boy. I mean, that's such a huge part of his coming to terms with his culture, himself. Feeling that sense of connection. If they did that, I would not watch the movie or support it.
Right. Like Ryan Douglas boycotts his own movie. Like
that's what you would see. Didn't put up about it either.
No, I mean, I would feel this is not even my work. So I would feel that way. It's like there's no way. There's no way that this is.
They love whitewashing things. So
yeah.
I mean, I hope that I can have some control and just say, this is really important. You make this character black. Here are some suggestions.
So integral to the story, and I hope that when it does come to the screen, because I think it's going to happen. This movie, I think it's more of a movie than it is a TV show. Mm-hmm. I think this movie would be, really good on big screen. The stuff that's happening, I forgot what you call it, the plasm or the
ectomist.
Ectomist. Yeah. When all that happens, I mean, that's going to be so creepy. And I think this was one of those books where you can actually get creeped out and scared from a book, and that's not as normal anymore either. And I think this was really well done on that part. So we have one more question I wanted to get. Where did it go? What is your writing schedule? Was the other question.
My writing schedule is it's all over the place. I write when inspiration hits usually, but sometimes I have to force myself, and usually it's really early in the morning. Like, I'll usually start at 12 a.m., finish around 5 a.m.
Wow, you said early. I was thinking start at 5 a.m.
No, it's I think I like the quiet of the night, and that might have to do with what I write as well. I just really like quiet. I like when it's dark. I feel like I can hear myself think most in those hours when like everyone is asleep. So I write, I almost every day. If I'm not like actually diving into like edits or drafting, whatever, I'm writing on my phone, like concepts, just thinking things through. So every day, usually between the wee hours, that's when I write.
So are you still writing the books that didn't get picked up? Are you still like working on those concepts? The sci-fi, I think you had a fantasy, a couple books in there.
Yeah, there are certain things that I've shelved and certain things that I'm gonna pull elements from for new projects. Because as you go, you kind of realize different things about the world and different things that you want to communicate. So yeah, I'm pulling ideas, but I'm not going back into the old stuff. I'm trying to look forward and speak to the current state of things. I want my work to be timely. So.
And this book here, this is not meant to be a series, right? You're going to do a follow-up to it, you think?
I wrote it as a standalone, but there may be a sequel.
I mean, you know what? Because there's a part in the end that I'm like, there's a door there. I mean,
there's a lot left to explore. I think it'll probably be down the road, a few years down the road, and I'll probably have Jake in college, or somewhere else other than his. But I'm not making any promises.
No, we're looking forward to whatever next work you do. But that, there is a door there, and it's also like, I mean, you could put this out as a movie, and then they do another movie, and you haven't written the second book yet. I mean,
like Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
But they outpace you. But anyway, so I got a couple quick questions, and these are meant to be fun. So have a little fun with it. And they're meant to just get at who you are as a person. There's some things in here we got to, make sure we got it right. So I'm gonna give you two options, and you're gonna tell me which one you are.
Okay.
Which one you like best? Ready? Ninja or pirate?
Ninja.
Ninja. All right, you ninja because of the cool pajamas, or?
The stealth of it, the quickness of it. I just relate more to that.
More towards the ninja. All right.
Yeah.
Text message or phone call?
Text message. I don't like talking.
Thank you. I don't even know why I have unlimited minutes on my cell phone, because I never use them. Flowers or chocolate?
Chocolate. I don't know what to do with flowers, and usually they die.
Usually they die.
They die on me, so chocolate is forever. So chocolate.
Would you rather, and this is because you're an author, would you rather be the hero or the villain?
I'd rather be the hero, but I think I'd rather be an anti-hero.
Anti-hero.
Because I'm deeply flawed. So,
right. So are you the brooding Batman?
Definitely brooding. I don't know if not Batman, more of a Nightwing.
There you go. All right, I can feel that. And so one of my author friends is giving me a hard time because I usually give them harder questions. So just know I gave you the nice, easy ones. But what was the last great book you read? That's my last question.
The last great
book.
The last great.
Now, if it's Justin J.R.'s book or Anthony's, you got to say it because they're here.
I don't. That's hard. The last, because great is making me feel like it has to be like an epic or something. Yeah, but to be honest, the last book that I read that was really good was Luster by Raven Leilani.
Okay.
That book is just amazing to me.
And as in your process, do you read a lot of YA or do you don't? You read everything? Or not?
That's a good question because I grew up on YA and I read YA. Like that's YA is all that formed the Taking of Jake. Well, not all, but mostly it's inspired by YA books. Recently, I haven't been reading a lot of YA. The last YA I really read and finished was The Hate You Give back in 2017. So I've like dipped in to see what's going on, and man, I don't know. Maybe I'm too old for it. I don't know. It just isn't the same as it used to be for me.
Yeah. So, well, I have mixed feelings with YA most times. That it's good that they have a lot of different options in some cases, but it's not like everything's very different and unique. It's like a lane that a lot of the YA authors are in. And
Yeah.
I don't know if that's publishers pushing them that way. Writers like, hey, I want to make some money, so I'm just write what everybody else is writing. I don't know what that is, but it does feel like a lot of the books are similar, even though it's got a different author on the book. And I'm not trying to bait you into saying anything. I'm just saying that as a reader, I pick up a book and I'm like, oh, this is gonna be great, and it's the same book, just with
No, that's why I don't really read them anymore, because when I was coming up, all of the concepts were different and unique and fresh. And I definitely think that it is publishers. I'm not going to blame authors, because I know that I have tried to get work through, and I've seen how they shut those gates. I've seen how they, like, even being in it, I see them like hammering down, like, well, we have to do it this way because other books are doing it this way. Well, what's a similar title? Like, it's always about making it like something else. And they're really, really pushing that on the publisher side. I don't know why, because it seems like readers and even authors know that, like, you want a unique vision when you read a book. You want to read what the author has to say. You want something different from the last book you read. But there's just this competitiveness in YA where it's like that one book has to beat the other book by doing it better, and people are just not encouraged to just be innovators and just be in their own lane. And they're so risk averse. They don't like doing new stuff, and that's going to get in my way because I like doing crazy stuff that's never been done before. I'm driven towards that. But yeah, I don't know, because I hear readers saying, we want this, we want like new adult, we want certain things. Like, you hear it, and then publishers are just kind of like, we can't hear that.
And that's tough because, you mentioned at the beginning that there's some books that, you would love to have seen or you've loved it written, and they're just not going to get through. And now that you say that out loud, I'm like, every time I see a new book, they're like, well, this this book meets this book. And it's almost like they're always couching it in something else. And I'm like,
yeah,
I read that book. I didn't really like that book. I guess I'm not gonna like Ryan's book, so therefore I won't read it. Like, they've already set me up to not either like it because I like the other one or not like it. They put me on the fence either way.
It's all based on things that have already happened, which is very regressive. It's not forward thinking at all. And I think it does have to do with a certain politic, to be completely honest. I think it has to do with holding on to the past. Like, you also see a lot of retellings that are based in European culture. And then we had an African fantasy do well, Children of Blood and Bone. And we saw a lot of other African fantasies that were following the same formula rather than, branching out and exploring the rich diversity of what Black authors have to say and across genres. It's just like, well, one book did well, Children, Blood and Bone did well. We have to do 10 more African fantasies. Hate You Give did well. Now we're going to do Black Lives Matter. And it's just so limiting. And I think that's really important to point out, because they don't sell it as though it is narrow. They sell it as though it is always transformative. Oh my gosh, there's a Black boy. Oh my gosh, there's a Black girl. Oh my gosh. And it's like, you read the book sometimes and it's like, okay, but what else is there? What you doing differently, besides just representation? And I think that is really the issue with getting too wrapped up in representation, because then you're just saying you can plunk a Black character in there, and that's all you have to do. And that's not true at all. There's a lot more work to do than that.
No, I appreciate that because I was thinking it was the authors, like just trying to make money. I'm glad you.
I think sometimes it's authors trying to make money, and a lot more often it's publishers really pushing
Okay.
that sameness.
Yeah. So does that mean it's going to be necessary for more people to go with like an independent or smaller publishing house, or how do
Um,
we get past that?
I hope so, because I really do believe in independent publishers and want to see more of those popping up. And I want to try to just individually put more support behind those, because I feel like in traditional publishing, they're not really valuing those unique visions, but in independent, they are allowing authors to kind of just like tell their stories and put that out there. I don't. I know that within my power, I'm trying to do everything that I can. A lot of the time, it feels like even within it, there's just so much pressure to just assimilate to people who, honestly, I feel like I'm speaking a different language from them. Like when I interact with publishing personnel, I don't know. Like they're thinking about money, but they're thinking about money almost to the detriment of making money. Because if they would just put books out there that readers want, they would make money. But it's like everything is like, it's risky, and it's like making an investment in new material is risky. Um, I think that, I would say just like everybody should write what they want, because I think that authors have to be the people writing the concept. We have to be the ones like bringing new material to the table and kind of like advocating for it and insisting on it and finding agents who advocate for it, because editors are never going to supply us anything new. They're never going to want to push boundaries. It starts at the bottom. It starts with authors saying, I'm going to write this story, even if it doesn't go anywhere, because it matters. Because when authors get swallowed up in that like competition, we're all doomed, because we like the writers are the ones who have to bring the ideas. We're the ones who have to push culture forward, and they're trying to close the gates. Yes, but we do have power, and we can insist on the story, even though it's risky. However, I'm not gonna lie. I did have to make concessions to get my first book out.
Yeah.
So it's whatever you're willing to do, how far you're willing to go,
I remember a conversation with Kiese Layman, and he was talking about his book Long Division, and it was a good conversation. And in the conversation, he talked about he wanted the book to be how he wrote it, and so he had to fight. And he said the reason why he was able to do that is because he had a job. So writers still need to make money.
Yeah.
They still have mortgages and rents and all the other good stuff. They like to go to Starbucks every once in a while. And so that battle is always there. And it's easy for me, who has a job, and saying, hey, writers should write what they write and be courageous. But I'm not the one that has to pay your bills, right? So
Right.
I understand the push and pull of it. So I want to spend these last minute or so to make sure people know how to support you. One, you guys know how this works. Go to Goodreads, hit the like button, hit the I want to read, add that to your collection. Go pre-order the book now. If you haven't already, I saw a couple comments come in through already, so they're waiting on the book, The Taking of Jake Livingston. If you come to my house, you can read this one, but you can't have it. Make sure to buy the book. If you don't get the pre-order, buy it July 13th, this coming Tuesday, when it comes out. Support your local bookstores, support Bookshop, or wherever dope books are sold. Now, I'll put this one on the screen too, Ryan. Your IG, and I should put your Twitter on there too, because I was like, oh, let me follow him. We're gonna have a good discussion, and I went there for the smile. But if you come there, you're gonna come to see some mess, and you may see some pecs. So I love it, man. Like you're free, man. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, I'm very free spirited. Twitter is where I don't usually post on IG, so.
Yeah. Well, so this is where that's why I put this on the professional one. And if they want the real, they go get Twitter, because I'm on Twitter and IG. So definitely follow Ryan. He's a great author. We're looking forward to not only this selling like hotcakes. I heard it's already on its second reprinting already. Did I hear that right?
With second printing. Yep.
That's look.
Exciting.
Like I said, you being more humble than I would be. I would just be like, you guys should worship me. I'd have a bunch of pinky rings and.
I don't want to mess up my karma, so I'm just trying to.
There you go. See,
be grateful.
That's why I follow you, so I can get some of this maturity. But no, the book is awesome. I really appreciate you hanging out with us for a little bit, especially given this lead up towards release day. We're hoping and praying for a really great, amazing release. The words so far have been really great for it. I got to write my review of it. I got a lot of pages to write, but I'm trying not to put too many spoilers in it. But Ryan, we really appreciate the work that you did. I think people are going to love it when they get a chance to read it. And we'll have some conversations about it afterwards. Let us know when the next one comes out, because we'll definitely want to support you there as well. And make sure you guys go follow him. Ryan Souffle on IG. He's on Twitter. He's the website. Go buy the book.
Okay, thank you so much for the conversation.
No, thank you. You have a wonderful evening. Thanks, everyone.